He stepped into the restroom on the 35th floor to splash water on his face after a grueling 3-hour meeting. What he didn't expect was the soft sound of muffled sobs coming from the last stall. Someone was crying, and then he realized it was the woman who mopped the floors every morning. The one who always bowed politely to everyone but whose name no one remembered. She didn't know the door hadn't locked. She was curled up on the toilet seat, face buried in hands stained with cleaning chemicals, hair disheveled, uniform smeared with bleach. On the floor was a torn-up payslip and a cracked old phone buzzing with a message. Rent still unpaid? If not, you and your kid can pack up and leave. He froze. She looked up, startled, panic in her eyes. And for that brief moment, they stared at each other, where the distance between a CEO and a cleaning lady was no more than the space between a gaze and a single tear falling. Maria wasn't like everyone else in that sleek glass building. She didn't arrive in a car, didn't wear designer perfume, and never walked in heels. Every morning, she took 2 buses just to get to work, a towering office complex in the heart of the city, where she cleaned floors, emptied trash bins, and scrubbed restrooms on the corporate levels of Skybridge Group under an outsourced cleaning contract. She lived with her aging mother and a young daughter with cerebral palsy in a worn-down apartment located in a low-income housing complex on the outskirts. The space barely fit 2 bunk beds, a small electric stove, and a table that doubled as a dining area and a medicine shelf. Maria had once been a top biology student, but her academic dreams ended at 21. When her father passed away and her mother fell gravely ill, she dropped out, started working, and eventually married a hot-tempered man with a heavy hand. After one particularly brutal beating that left her falling down the stairs, Maria fled with her 3-month-old daughter and never looked back. Since then, life had been a blur of dawn to midnight shifts, scraping together every penny to survive, to afford medicine for her mother and school fees for her child. Lucas, the man Maria accidentally encountered that day, was the complete opposite. Lucas Alvarez, 34, was the youngest CEO in Skybridge's history, one of the region's leading data tech corporations. Standing 6 feet tall, with an athletic build, a square jaw, and neatly trimmed dark brown hair, Lucas was the kind of man who graced the covers of Forbes, Business Insider, and even Vogue Men. Yet there was something distant in his eyes, like he always stood a step away from the world. He lived in a penthouse over 4,000 square feet, with everything money could buy, except laughter. His father died when Lucas was just 14. His mother remarried a British businessman and, from then on, showed little interest in the boy who once dreamed of becoming an artist. Lucas was funneled into finance, Ivy League prep schools, and a world built on numbers and the crushing weight of expectations that were never truly his own. He had loved once, just once, and was betrayed when his fiancée left him for someone wealthier, just months before their wedding. Since then, Lucas had lived by logic. To him, everything, including emotions, had to be managed, contained, and optimized. He didn't hate poor people, but he believed they were lacking discipline, drive, even luck, until the day he saw Maria. It was a quiet Monday afternoon. Most employees had left, with only a few staying behind for overtime. Lucas had just finished a grueling 3-hour meeting with the Asia-Pacific board. His forehead was damp with sweat, and his throat parched from relentless debate. He stepped into the utility restroom near the tech department, a place rarely visited, and then, the door creaked open. A faint sound of sobbing echoed from the farthest stall. Lucas froze. He hesitated, about to turn away, when he heard a muffled whisper, broken, trembling, as if someone was trying to hold back a dam of tears behind those words. "Mama, I'm sorry. I promised I'd send money this week, but they canceled all overtime." Lucas stood still. He recognized that voice. It was Maria. A strange sensation stirred inside him. It wasn't pity. It wasn't curiosity. It was something deeper. Something that tugged at the edges of his composure. He knocked gently on the stall door. "Maria?" Silence. Then the sound of crumpled toilet paper. The door opened slightly. Maria stood there, eyes red, face flushed, immediately looking down like a child caught doing something wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb anyone." Lucas didn't say anything right away, but his eyes softened. For the first time in all the months they'd worked in the same building, he truly looked at her, really looked. "Are you okay?" Maria bit her lip and nodded faintly, though her hands trembled. Lucas turned, then paused. "Would you like a hot cup of tea?" She looked up, startled, not because of the offer, but because it was the first time someone had spoken to her like a human being. Blank. Underscore, blank. That evening, they sat tucked in a quiet corner of a small cafe near the company. Lucas listened as Maria shared stories about her mother, now hospitalized in Mexico, about her tiny rental apartment, about how, every night, she taught herself English with a free mobile app, hoping that one day, she'd qualify to become a secretary. Lucas didn't interrupt, he just listened. Every detail Maria revealed was like a blade to his pride. He had always thought he understood life, but realized he'd only ever lived inside a glass box, one polished each morning by people like Maria. From that day on, something shifted between them. Lucas began to notice her more, the way she silently wiped the boardroom tables, or how she scrubbed a coffee stain left by an irritable client. And Maria, she avoided looking at him. But deep inside, something was changing, until one day, they saw each other again, this time at the company's quarterly celebration. Under warm lights, soft jazz music, and the gentle clinking of champagne glasses, Maria stood quietly by the refreshment table. She was still in her plain gray uniform, unassuming, humble, but Lucas couldn't look away. Then, a voice murmured behind her, just loud enough for him, and others nearby, to hear. "What's the cleaning lady doing at this party? Who invited her?" Maria froze. Her hand trembled. She was about to walk away, when Lucas stepped forward, his voice calm, yet commanding. "I invited her." The room paused, air frozen for a beat. And if anyone here believes a person's worth is defined by their job title, then maybe it's time they relearn the meaning of kindness. Maria looked at him, eyes wide with surprise, but also shadowed by sadness, because she knew, those words, no matter how powerful, couldn't erase the prejudice carved into people's minds. Blank. Underscore, blank. That night, she left a small envelope on Lucas's desk. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Thank you for standing up for me. But I can't stay in a place where I need to be defended as an exception. I need to leave, not because I'm hurt, but because I want to choose where I truly belong." Lucas read it over and over. What he hadn't realized, what he never saw coming, was that a heart he thought sealed in steel could ache this much. And this was only the beginning of the twist that would change everything. Lucas Alvarez sat silently in his office on the 57th floor, a space once seen as a symbol of power and vision. But today, it echoed only with the soft patter of rain on glass, and the swelling silence in his chest. He opened the letter Maria had left behind. The handwriting was neat, simple, yet each word hit like a stone. "I'm not angry with you, Lucas. I'm just saddened that we never truly saw each other." At first, he thought it was just a quiet goodbye, but as he flipped the letter over, something slipped out. A scanned certificate from Skybridge's internal charity fund dated 2010. A name, Maria del Sol, listed as the donor of $10 to launch an education initiative for undocumented immigrant children. She would have only been 14 at the time. Lucas was stunned. He pulled up the HR database. Maria was listed as nothing more than temporary cleaning staff from third-party outsourcing. No one had looked into her past. No one knew. Maria had once been a top student in the gifted program at Columbia, until she dropped out. No one had known, At 17, she was offered a full scholarship in international relations, but turned it down to care for her mother undergoing late-stage cancer treatment. And no one had remembered. It was Maria, only 20 years old, who had quietly written the original proposal for the Skybridge Reconnect initiative, the very same one Lucas had once pitched to the board as his own idea. He stood up, opened the secured archive cabinet, and rummaged through dusty files he hadn't touched in years. Tucked between financial reports from 2017, he found an old envelope. To the executive board, if this idea helps someone, please use it. I don't need the credit. Lucas was floored. The woman he once pitied had paved the way for his earliest success. The quiet cleaning lady at the CEO gala had once been the hope of countless immigrant youth. He remembered the way Maria looked at him as she left the office. It wasn't sorrow. It was the gaze of someone who had walked away from every personal dream, just to protect her dignity. Lucas could no longer sit still. He called the entire HR team. I need every record related to the Reconnect initiative. And I need to know, where is Maria now? No one had an answer. There was no contact information, no forwarding address. Only one janitor vaguely recalled her mentioning a community center in Queens, where she volunteered on weekends. That same day, Lucas left the Skybridge building. No assistant, no chauffeur, just himself, a soaked suit, and a remorse too heavy for words. Blank. Blank. At a rundown community center in Queens, where a free English class for Latino children was in session, Lucas stood under the awning. Looking through the window, Maria was smiling. The light from the whiteboard reflected onto her face, thinner than before. But not sad. He didn't dare go in. He just stood there, trembling, holding onto an umbrella. The same umbrella she had placed in the office coat rack on her first day, and never used. Lucas gently placed a letter on the front step. Maria, you didn't just remind a CEO of his responsibility. You saved a man from drowning in his own arrogance. If I once said, don't let your kindness make you weak, then today, I want to say, your kindness made you stronger than anyone I've ever known. I owe you, not for what you gave Skybridge, but for helping me remember who I was, before I became a CEO. Lucas turned to leave just as Maria stepped outside. Their eyes met, no words spoken. But between them, the umbrella opened, not to shield from the rain, but as a silent reminder that someone once quietly sheltered an entire company, and no one ever knew her name. Ever since that speech, Skybridge felt like a river cleared of boulders. People no longer looked at Lucas Alvarez with suspicion or envy. They saw in him, not just a young CEO, but a man willing to admit his mistakes and begin again. And the petite housekeeper, Maria, suddenly became a quietly revered figure in the hearts of everyone at the company. But she never returned to Skybridge. Not out of hurt, not out of pride. Maria simply knew what she needed wasn't the spotlight. It was a quiet place where she could use her hands to help people who once were just like her. Blank. Lucas searched for her for weeks. He went to her old apartment. It was empty. He visited the soup kitchen, the nursing home, the places where he had seen her carrying bowls of broth for the elderly. No one knew where she had gone. They only said, Maria was the kind of person who never leaves footprints. She only leaves warmth, and quietly steps away. One day, driving through a poor neighborhood on the city's southern edge, beneath dim streetlights and cracked sidewalks, he spotted a small hand-painted sign, Maria's Sewing and Kitchen. He pulled over, stepped inside. She was smiling, the same soft smile, her hands dusted in flour, her hair tied back neatly. A little orphaned girl was drawing beside the window. No one called her the maid. They called her Miss Maria, the one who saved our street. Their eyes met. Lucas said nothing. He simply nodded. She nodded back, as if words were no longer necessary between them. Blank. A month later, Skybridge inaugurated its first ever free vocational center for immigrant women and underprivileged children, funded entirely by Lucas. On the founder's plaque, there was only one line: Maria's grace, where a heart once hurt chose to heal others. Maria never appeared, but everyone knew. This center was her heart, rewritten through the hands of the man who had once broken it. Blank. Underscore, blank. One rainy afternoon, Lucas visited the center. A little girl was wiping the glass windows. She looked at him and asked, "Are you the man who once made Miss Maria sad?" Lucas paused, then smiled gently. "Yes, but now I'm trying to make her smile again." The child looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Then you have to wipe the windows with both hands," she says. "When you want to say sorry, use both hands, one to clean, one to support." Lucas chuckled softly, and he wiped, with both hands. For real. Blank. Underscore, blank. That evening, back in his now simpler penthouse, Lucas opened a small picture frame he had long kept in a drawer. Inside was an old photo. Maria sitting in the Skybridge kitchen. Eyes swollen, lips tight as if swallowing her tears. He wrote on the back, "I once saw someone fall in silence, and choose to rise with kindness. She didn't teach me how to be rich. She taught me how to be human." Blank. Underscore, blank. Later, Maria was invited to speak at a conference on social equity. She said only this: "I once cleaned floors. I was forgotten, dismissed, unnamed, but I never forgot one thing. If the world is cold, be the first to boil the kettle. Even if no one invites you, make the tea anyway." The audience rose in applause. Lucas was there too, but this time, not in a VIP seat. He stood at the back, wearing a badge that read, "Volunteer Porter." Maria saw him, but she only smiled, the same quiet smile from that kitchen years ago. Between them was a distance, wide enough to protect dignity, yet close enough to understand. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's the bravest act, when facing yourself. Blank. Underscore, blank. One winter day, as Lucas left the office for home, it began to rain. He had no umbrella, but he didn't look for cover. He stood there, letting the cold touch him, as Maria once had. A passerby stopped and held an umbrella over his head. When Lucas turned to thank them, the person said, "I once saw Miss Maria do this. I'm just following her example." Lucas stood still. An umbrella, a single tear, a quiet apology. And from that, hundreds of hands reached out to others. Maria didn't need to become a director. She had become faith itself. And Lucas, the man who was once a CEO, was now just someone searching for the person he used to be. Never think you're too small to make a difference. Sometimes, the actions we assume no one notices are exactly what change someone's life forever. If you ever see someone wiping away tears alone in silence, don't turn away. You may never become a CEO, but you might be the reason someone doesn't give up on life. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, share it with someone who might need it. Because maybe, just maybe, today, you'll be the second umbrella in someone's life.